Well, it's Blossom 2024 already, and we have already passed the full bloom stadium as the leaves are already on the ground, as you can see. So it's really coming along for the season, and we still got some exciting things to do, so I think we better get started with that. We did not just invest in all the new hardware on our machines, so I really want to make use of it this season already. So I spent a lot of time in learning what to do and how to do it. So now finally we should be able to do it. So let's see what I'm talking about. Today we're gonna do blossom thinning on our apple trees, but only on the trees which have too many blossom. And for that we need to do a drone map. We need to send it away for some analysis. We get the data back, we refer it to the RTK point where it exactly is. We have to check in the field at what threshold we want to spray, and next up we have to go spraying like we're gonna do now. So I already imported the map, so that means on the display of the sprayer I can now see the map, so I can show you how it looks like when we got a map imported. And the sprayer will turn on and off automatically on the trees where we want to spray or we do not want to spray. So we have calibrated everything and we should be ready to spray now. But first let's see what I all did before we got started with this, as there's a lot of things which we had to do in front. So at this moment I got the drone in the sky, so it's flying by itself, as I got a automated map which it needs to fly, and it's basically making pictures of all the pear trees at this moment with blossom. So that way we got a blossom map of all the pear trees, and we can determine if you have issues in the blossom or not, and for that also if you have sicknesses or not. And we can use that again with the donor sprayer as an application map to only spray where we need to spray. Let's see how that's gonna work out. So you can see drone is just above me and it's making pictures. Once it's done, it will land itself automatically again. So it's notifying me of that now with the beeping sound that it's gonna land. So I don't need to do anything and it will just come down and land nicely. Even with this heavy wind as we have right now, everything should be fine. Well, pears are in full bloom today, so the first bloom leaves are dropping on the ground. So we're now making a drone map, as mostly everything is opened which has to be open from flowers. So having a drone map today seems to make the most sense. I already did the other field, and I also got a RTK GPS antenna in the field there, so I can recognize that on the drone data. That way I can georeference everything, and then I know that I'm on exactly the correct spot. So I hope to be able to do this complete mapping with just my DJI Mavic Pro 2, as it doesn't have RTK, so it means I need a reference point, and my reference point is right here. So I keep it in the vision of the camera, so if the drone flies over I will recognize this white bulb on top, and that will be my exact coordinate of which I just saved from the GPS receiver. So I know the real position and I know the visible position, and they should match exactly. One of the other things we need for what I want to do this season is to know exactly where every tree is, and to do so I just need to map corner trees of every row, and I need the planting distance, and that way I can tell exactly where every tree is, or not exactly, but at least we know it by assuming it. So we're gonna measure every corner position with the RTK GPS, and I can use that 2 positions from both sides of the row to draw a line over the row, and that's exactly where the row is. Because it's measured with RTK, it's centimeter accurate, so we can always keep using this once I record it. So let's go record some. So I did make all the blossom maps with the drone. So for that I just got a guide of how to fly, and I decided to send all the files to Aurea Imaging, and they processed the data for me. So I've been making the images already for a lot of years, so I know how it works. I'm familiar with the complete process. I'm just not able to process it myself. I can only send in the pictures and Aurea process them into a blossom map. I did make the big pictures in the past, and I will show you that later on, but first we're gonna take a look at what exactly I made. So at the Aurea portal I just made this field here, and I ordered a blossom map of it, so I can now view that. And by flying over with the drone I got an actual picture of the field, and that complete picture has resulted in this blossom map. So every single square here represents a tree. You can see some trees are missing, and that's very logical as I'm flying with my own drone and the camera is not superb for this work. It does work. I need to do a lot of calibration myself to get it to work like this, but I am able to manage it, so I'm really happy with that already. So we can see that we have values anywhere between 0 and 3688, and to figure out what is a high amount of blossom and a low amount of blossom, I actually had to walk into the field up to the trees. So these here were really interesting, as we have here a lot of green trees but also a lot of red trees, and what we have to do in the field is to decide the threshold which tree we would spray and which one not. So we have to decide and look at a tree, for example this one with value 112, if that has enough blossom in our opinion or not, and also for 1218 if it has enough blossom or not. And I just did that by walking through the orchard with that. We walked up to a lot of trees, so constantly raising and lowering the threshold, and eventually we figured that 1200 is the right threshold for this field. Now I also did the same with another field. So this field is a lot greener, as you can see, and that's because the blossom stage is a bit further when the drone flied over. So we had to do a calibration for this field as well, and this field actually has its threshold sitting at 1600. So we had to make the decision for every field, because every drone flight is a little bit different, weather conditions are different, and also the stage of blossom is different in the field, even while the image was only taken half an hour apart from the other field. It's still a lot of difference between these two fields, and that's just because they have different planting years and also different circumstances of the moisture in the ground. As this is a very wet field, well, this field here, it is wet, but it's not extremely wet. I also asked Aurea to send me the orthographic photos, as these are the photos which the drone made. So the drone made about 500 photos of the whole field. That resulted in one big picture, which is being calculated by Aurea, and the picture just shows a complete picture of the field. So we can look down onto all the trees, and I can also activate the blossom map we just made for this field. So all the squares are trees which are gonna be sprayed because they have too much blossom in our opinion, while the rest does not. And I mean, it's really white for most of the trees. And we checked and we haven't found a single tree where we could not agree to. But you can see here these trees which are not being sprayed, they all do not carry that much blossom. So it means they produce only a few apples, and we do not want to damage any of these apples, because every apple we get from these trees is good and we need to get as many as possible. And that should also fix the alternate bearing issue of this field, because if these trees do not produce any apples this year, they produce a lot of growth this season and also a lot of fruit next season, and that would continue the alternate bearing, as it would overproduce next year, and the year after it will have an alternate bearing year again because it produced too much in 2025. So we really do not want to spray these ones in 2024 to make sure that they do not get overfilled in 2025. Probably it will still happen, but we know that next year these trees will carry too much apples, and we definitely have to spray them next year. So I suspect if we make the same map next year that we get the opposite of the current map, so that exactly the opposite of trees should be sprayed, and hopefully we should also spray the trees from this year a little bit, because we want to prevent the trees from this year going in the alternate bearing year next year, just by reducing the amount of fruit they produce this year. And that should give us a more consistent output of the field for each year, and that's just better for the market and also better for ourselves, because we want more consistency in the farm, and this is how we want to achieve that. So I got here two maps. It's actually this field and this field, and I can even turn the front field off. I made these images in the past as well, because the drone is one of my hobbies and I figured a lot of fun stuff out in the past, and that also includes making these orthographic photos. So I also got a map of 2020, for example. So this is what in 2020 the blossom looked like, and if we zoom in here we can see that we have a lot of alternate bearing here. So there's only a few trees which are actually producing nice amount of apples on this side of the field. Well, if we go more into this region, we can see that we have a lot more high blossom trees, and that's how this field keeps alternating every year. And I just really want to get rid of that issue now. So we are gonna upload the blossom map which we produced into the sprayer, and then the sprayer has to decide for each tree if it has to be sprayed or not, depending on what this map is telling to the sprayer. So with the new Isobus set on the tunnel sprayer, we are capable of doing this. So we are gonna do this. If I now turn off the maps, then we can see that I still have some dots and lines here. So I actually measured all the trees, as you saw. So these dots are the exact positions of all the starts of a row. So I know that this dot connected to the outside dot here is one row of apples. So what I did is I drew out lines in between, and these lines, they represent the exact positions of the apple tree rows. So that way we know that we are exactly on the spot of where the row is located. And Aurea needs that information to make sure that the squares they produce are exactly on the center of the row, and that will give the best result for spraying on the application map. And this is also really helpful for me, as it shows exactly where all the rows of apples are. So I did it for all our fields, and that's really nice, as we can just have a look at exactly the positions of where the rows are, where they start and where they end. And sometimes that's just super helpful. So we also did this field, and the reason that I chose these three fields is because they are Elster-Elshoff and they are super sensitive to alternate bearing. So we really want to spray these fields with blossom thinning to make sure that the alternate bearing is something of the past within a few years, and the productivity goes up like that. before we get going, we first need to calibrate the tractor and sprayer. So we got the GPS receiver on the roof here. So it's just located somewhere, so we need to fill in where exactly it's located. And we also need to fill in where the nozzles of the sprayer are. That way everything can be calculated exactly from where we are driving, where the GPS antenna is, and also where the nozzles are. That way when we turn around and everything is calculated properly to switch on and off the sections at exactly the correct position. So let's measure that in first. Well, we're completely set to go spraying on application maps. So let's hop in the tractor and get going. Our blossom period is nearly over already, and these are the Elster where we applied the ATS on with the application map. So we did a total of 4 hectares of Elster with application map. So I hope that thinning progress is doing good. Otherwise we do have a lot of handwork or we get no apples, either one of two. But I hope it works out and that we get a nice amount of apples on every tree. And also the alternate bearing trees, because we really want to fight the alternate bearing in these trees, as they have a lot of alternate bearing and that's costing us a lot of productivity, and we really want the productivity to go up. So when the productivity is up, the quality usually is also up, and both are important to make it well financially. So let's hope this is gonna help. I'm really curious for this.